Hi guys, it's Mr. Sean. Did you know that over half the people that watch this channel aren't subscribed yet? Did you also know that subscribing is the best and easiest way to help this channel? Please help me get to my goal this year of 1,000 subscribers. It's just a little click for you, but it means an awful lot to me. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
Welcome back to the channel, everybody. It is I, your host, Mr. Sean, and today we're going to talk a little bit about Cyrus Birch, my D&D character. So if you've been listening to the channel, you may know that I have been a dungeon master for quite some time, and one of the big things about being a dungeon master is you start to fall victim to what is known as the DM's curse. And if you don't know what that is, it means the more you run the game as a DM, the less likely you are to actually find a good group to play with. This is typically caused by a combination of two things. One, because everyone is relying on you to run the game, there are less people in your immediate circle that want to play and are willing to run the game. I mean, in this, even sometimes people will get the urge to like, hey, I want to run something, and then for one reason or another that falls through and you're back to being the only DM and being a forever DM. The other thing that happens is that as a DM, it can be hard to give away the reins for certain people. You've gotten so used to being more or less the entire world that being a small part of it can be overwhelming, and also you have to set aside your ability. You probably know all the weaknesses and all that of the various monsters, but you have to pretend like you don't and not metagame. And the other thing that happens a lot of times, I guess, is that when you do find a place where you can play, something happens and that group disbands because that group turns out not to be as dependable as your group. So you're right back to looking for another group to play in, all while still managing your schedule, your life, and also your your own D&D campaign. So a lot of DMs just stay DMs and they don't get to be players. For me, however, that curse has been broken. My cousin, who has recently gotten into D&D and has actually he and his wife have joined my campaign, is running a campaign of his own for his wife and a couple of their friends, and he asked me to join, and I jumped at the chance. Now, the last time I got to play D&D as a player was before COVID. And the party I joined needed a healer, so I ended up making a cleric ranger multi-class, but what I've always wanted to do is a bard. And so since bards can also have some healy spells, this time I decided to make a bard like I've always wanted to. Now, while bard is honestly the most versatile class in 5th edition D&D, it can be pretty much anything. He's a full martial, a full caster. You can kind of do whatever you want with it based on the spells you take and the college that you go after. A lot of people want to play the bard as like the daring, swashbuckler, ladies' man, rock star. And that's not what I did with my character. I decided to build a College of Eloquence bard who is more of a snake oil salesman. Someone like Harold Hill from The Music Man or Dr. Terminus from Pete's Dragon. A man who makes his living not by slaying dragons and seducing women, but by conning people out of their hard-earned gold. And to do this, I wanted to do it in a way that his persona wouldn't become grating and that I could do away with it if I so chose. And that is how Cyrus Birch gained his alter ego of Dr. Alastair Terminius, the great traveling doctor selling magical tinctures and concoctions to cure the ails and woes of the common man. So let's get into how I did that. So first thing to talk about is the basic building blocks of Cyrus/Alastair that I did. Now, when I joined the campaign, at the time, my cousin's players were already level 8, so I was told to build a level 8 character, and I of course chose to do all 8 levels of Bard and make him a College of Eloquence Bard. Now, when I rolled up the character, starting him at level 1, my rolls were pretty middle of the road. Nothing too terrible, no negatives, but I only got one high roll, which by high roll I would say that was my 17, which I put into charisma. Since I made Cyrus a half-elf, I was able to add another 2 to charisma, making that a 19, and then instead of taking stat increases while leveling him up to level 8, I took both the actor feat, which bumped his charisma up to a full 20, and I also took the hand crossbow expert feat as well. I did this because as a College of Eloquence bard, he doesn't get the extra attacks that you get with, say, the College of Swords, and I wanted him to be able to make 2 attacks a turn if I'm choosing to use melee instead of a spell attack. And so his weapon is a rapier of wounding, and with the hand crossbow expert feat, he's able to use his hand crossbow, 1 in melee combat, 2 as a bonus action when he makes a melee attack, and 3 he does not have to reload it, which is nice. And while he did start out with a normal hand crossbow, he has since upgraded it to a magical one that deals additional force damage, but when he is deciding to forego his spells and start swinging his sword, he does get to follow up by shooting the hand crossbow. So he's got a decent dexterity stat, which helps him with those, but it's not nearly as good as his charisma, but he is able to hold his own in a fight. But there was a very specific reason that I chose to give him the actor feat. Specifically, your ability to mimic the voice of others and pretend to be someone else is amazing, especially given that he has a alter ego, which is also part of his charlatan background. So when he is able to seamlessly slip from his real self into the Doctor, at which point his persona and voice do drastically change. I also built him to be good specifically at deception and medicine, because sometimes to be a convincing fake, you kind of have to know what you're doing. And that became the building blocks for the character Cyrus Birch. Now, I was allowed to give him 2 magical weapons up to rare level when I built him via my cousin's instructions, as his party had been given quite a few magical items. As I previously stated, the first one was the Rapier of Wounding, but the second one is I chose to give him the Cape of the Mountebank, and that is actually very specifically for his persona. While yes, of course, the ability to Dimension Door in combat is great, it also is going to be a kind of a thing he can do when he's out and about, not in combat, as part of his, magical doctor shtick. Ultimately, while he is competent in a fight, his words and his persona are his greatest weapons, and let's get into how that came to be with a little bit about his backstory. So Cyrus's story actually starts before Cyrus was even born. His elven mother was born into one of the wealthy families of Waterdeep. And while this would have meant a life of luxury for her, she instead decided to do something unthinkable. She fell in love with one of her family's human stable hands. Both knowing that her family would never approve, they decided to run away from Waterdeep and settled in the countryside far away from there and built a farm. Eventually they would have a son, and they named him Cyrus. And of course he took on his daddy's last name of Birch. So Cyrus grew up on the family farm. Given his rough, farmhand country demeanor, one would never suspect that he was descended from elven aristocracy. And while she never regretted her life on the farm, Cyrus's mother would tell him stories of the big city, and he could only dream of its splendor. One day, a man came to their little village. A man selling magical potions from parts far and wide, claiming they could cure ailments, make crops grow, and even give you the hardiest livestock you could ever take to market. The man was convincing, and people parted with their hard-earned gold quite readily. It was only after the man had left that it was discovered that all of his tinctures were pure hogwash. While much of the town, his parents included, were rightfully outraged by the man's actions, Cyrus was inspired. While the man had been a fraud, he'd been a convincing one, and he'd embodied all the glitz and glamour of the stories that Cyrus had heard from his mother. And Cyrus realized that he didn't want a quiet life on the farm. He wanted wealth and splendor, and figured the best way to get it would be to do the same as the man had done. And so at the age of 20, Cyrus left home to learn just how he could become like the traveling man. And over the past 60 years, he has honed his craft. His hair might have grayed a bit since he left home, but being a half-elf does have its perks as he still maintains his youthful visage. And now when Cyrus comes into town, he is not claiming to be Cyrus Birch. No, he is Dr. Alistair Terminius. While Cyrus Birch might just be a rough-and-tumble farmhand, Dr. Alistair Terminius is a fine purveyor of wonderful tinctures and concoctions from the world over and the plains beyond. His most notable item, Liquid Charisma, a tonic guaranteed to help you woo the wench, land that business deal, or just be a hit at parties. In reality, it's mostly just dwarven alcohol that makes you think you're charming, flavored with a little prestidigitation and you'll think it's real medicine. While he has yet to make his fortune, he's not doing bad for himself. He's been able to live comfortably enough these past, 60 years. And while he would definitely be considered to have the alignment of lawful evil, he definitely has a code. He is more than willing to scam you out of your last gold piece, but he's not willing to kill innocent people. Unfortunately, this has run him afoul of the Brotherhood of Silence, an assassin's guild that wished to use his skills to help them infiltrate certain areas to commit their contracts, and he was not willing to help, which was not great for him safety-wise. When Cyrus enters the story, the campaign, he is at a tavern in the Underdark section of Waterdeep, also known as Waterdeeper. Actually, I think my cousin called it Underdeep, but I like Waterdeeper. He happens to be having breakfast at the same inn that the party is staying at when a member of the Brotherhood of Silence comes looking for him. Before he can even react, the murder hobo party beats the crap out of the assassin, killing him. Figuring there are safety in numbers, Alistair decides to accompany the party as they GTFO out of that tavern. The party is in Underdeep because they have been sent there by a Druigar crime boss from the town of Fraggle Rock. And no, I'm not making that up, that's the name of the town. Apparently the party crashed his daughter's wedding, and by crashed I mean fell through a roof and accidentally crushed the groom. He is holding a magical book belonging to the party's druid as ransom, as they go to do a job for him in Waterdeep, which is to kill Xanathar. Now, the party is reckless but not stupid. They know they don't have any chance of killing Xanathar, but they wish to meet with him to ask his advice as to what to do about their predicament, kind of being hopeful that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So they begin asking Cyrus what he knows about Xanathar. Now, mentioning Xanathar's name out in the open is a great way to attract the attention of his men, and the party is soon surrounded by them and taken to Xanathar himself. Things get off to a bad start when the party's druid tries to cast animal friendship on Xanathar's goldfish. However, throughout this intense encounter, which is just more of a conversation, the druid manages to slug off 5 of Xanathar's eye-beams, making her save every time and earning her the custom feat Eye-Beam Master. Eventually, Cyrus, in his Alistair persona, is able to explain to the crime boss the situation the party finds themselves in, and, that they have come to him seeking advice, and because they know how great he is, basically stroking the beholder's ego rather than incurring his wrath. Xanathar decides that the best course of action is for them to go back, kill the Druigar crime boss, and bring him the book. Now, this book has some kind of weird abyssal or infernal magic to it, and it's not something that they want in the hands of Xanathar, but they decide to deal with that problem at a later date. And so, now having also been lumped in with this and being given this task by a crime boss that you don't want to mess with, Cyrus officially joins the party. The other members being the Halfling Druid, the Aarakocra monk, and an elven ranger. Rather than making their way back through the Underdark to where they came from to get to Fraggle Rock, they decide it might be easier to go above ground. Before leaving Waterdeep, Cyrus goes and meets with one of his suppliers to see if they have any shipments going towards Fraggle Rock so that the party can be disguised as just extra security for the shipment. After this is secured, they make their way out of Waterdeep along with the alcohol shipping caravan, and make their way towards the Yawning Portal, which, yes, in normal D&D, the Yawning Portal is in Waterdeep. That is not the case here. Unfortunately, once the party makes their way to the Yawning Portal and down into the Underdark via the Yawning Portal, the caravan is ambushed by a deboulé, and the alcohol and the caravan, Surf Neblin, are all slaughtered. However, the party does manage to make it out alive and continue to make their way to Fraggle Rock. Before heading into town, Cyrus uses Disguise Self on himself to go in and kind of scout around. He overhears rumors that a black dragon was seen in the vicinity of the town. He also discovers that a good amount of the Druigar crime boss's guards have been posted in the city rather than at his compound, where they would be much harder to fight through. And so the party eventually makes their way back to the crime boss's compound. After fighting their way through the crime boss's 2 pet displacer beasts and a small handful of Druigar soldiers, they come upon the crime boss himself along with a couple other black magic practitioners, and they are using the book, the infernal book, to try and create some kind of ritual. They are being guarded by a heavily armored black dragonborn who at one point during the fight transforms into a large black dragon, though in the end the party is victorious. Alistair is able to raise the black dragonborn back to 1 hit point using his medicine skill, because like I said, he does know a little bit about medicine, so that they can question him. While he doesn't give them any useful information, he says that this was supposed to be the breaking of a seal, and that they had already interrupted the breaking of another previously. This is parts of the adventure that Cyrus was not present for, and that now they will be hunted. Though seeing as that they are now wanted by the Brotherhood of Silence, they are wanted probably by this Druigar crime boss's men once this gets figured out, as well as potentially running afoul of the Xanathar Guild. Cyrus tells the Dragonborn that they'll have to get in line and stabs him to death. At this point, he disguises himself as one of the Druigar crime boss's men and escorts the party back out of town. The party has decided to try and mock up a fake version of the Infernal Book to give to Xanathar, which they are attempting to make back at the Yawning Portal, and that is so far where the story has ended for Cyrus Birch, until the next time I meet with my cousin and his friends for the next session. And while Cyrus definitely deals the least amount of damage in combat of all of the party, he has a very valuable function that the other party members are not great at, and that is his ability to talk his way out of situations. Both with his stats as well as his class features, it is impossible for him to get less than a 20 on a deception check. So while half the time he's lying out his ass, you'd never know it. And this was designed because I was told that the party is not great at social situations with how they've built and how they play their characters, and they definitely need someone that could be the face and the mouth of the party so that they don't get themselves stabbed for, saying the wrong thing. While I've only played a handful of sessions so far, it has been phenomenal to get to play this character. I thoroughly enjoy it. I enjoy interacting as a party member rather than just all the NPCs like I do in my game, and I look forward to where this campaign is going to go. So thank you so much for listening to me gush about my D&D character. If you're still listening, please be sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button. It really does help out the channel. Make sure to leave a comment as that helps with the algorithm. And hey, be sure to check out my eBay and my Mercari for all of my custom miniatures, including my spicy miniatures. And also, if you'd like to see uncensored pictures of the spicy miniatures, those can be found over on my subreddit, r/Chimera Miniatures. And if you don't see the one that you're looking at and interested in there, just message me and I will happily post it there for you. Until next time, everybody, I'm Mr. Sean, this is Chimera Miniatures, and I hope that all your rolls are crits, both hits and fails, because there is things to be learned in failure. And I also hope that you'll alpha great day, and an even beta tomorrow. Bye-bye.